How is everybody doing? And welcome back for another Strength Chat episode. Today, I've got a very special guest for you all. Today, I'm joined by a gym owner, a coach. He's worked with over 3,000 clients, from elite level athletes all the way to regular gym goers. Today, I'm joined by the one and only Luka Hocevar. How are you doing?
Pleasure to be on the show, man. Waiting for the caffeine to kick in, but it's getting there.
Well, thanks a lot for taking the time to jump on. But how are you, Luca? What's been happening in your world recently?
Man, that could be the whole show in itself. Yeah, I'm in this kind of crazy stage. I'm having my first kid end of May, so that's coming up. And so, personal life with that, we're moving. Uh, the gym's on the up and up. There's a ton of work there to do. I started a new kind of business mentorship for gym owners. I got three new products coming on online. I mean, it goes on, and I'm speaking, I don't know, 7 times before the baby comes. So all over the country and possibly international as well. So yeah, it's I don't like the word busy because busy can mean a lot of things. Doesn't mean you're getting anything done, but it's uh it's packed and productive right now. That's for sure.
Nice. And how have you kind of scheduled that around when the baby's coming? Is it kind of just if and when, or everything's just on red alert depending on where you'll be?
No, I think it's definitely going to be a big shift. And when I talk to people, it's kind of like when it happens, everything changes. But I'm trying to get ahead at least on the schedule part of things quite a bit. I tend to, for example, my own training session has been very interesting because for a long time, I was a late night training person, right? I had a whole crew of people. We train late night. I work all day, coach like really long days, train late at night. Now, it's kind of shifted to lunch, right? Like I train at lunch. As soon as it's going to be a 5 a.m. training session, I'll probably get two or three of those in per week. And so just kind of like adjusting the schedule so when the time comes, it's not like a complete 180-degree overhaul. I'm already kind of looking ahead both from schedule to, the business side of things, automating things I can automate, outsourcing things I can outsource, and then obviously leaving the things that one I either love doing or I'm best at doing. And I think that in general, on any entrepreneur, that's kind of the goal, over time is I like the Dan Sullivan's got a great book, simple, short read, but it's called, Who Not How.
Yeah.
And at a certain point in time, you really have to, you can't be doing all the hows, right? And at the beginning, like when I start, I was coaching all day. I was, doing the CRM stuff, the follow up, the sales, the scheduling, the like you name it, I did it, right? And
Yeah.
then you start outsourcing to an admin and this that. So now it's kind of like, how can I have more and more of the right people on the bus helping me, um,
Yeah.
which is what I'm doing. I have four businesses, so there's quite a lot to kind of figure out and manage, but it's happening because I'm, the pressure, and it's good pressure, as Danny Meyer would call it, constant gentle pressure. It's good. It's like, hey, the time's coming. This becomes the most important thing in your life, which is family, and to make sure that everything around it is working the way it's supposed to. So that's kind of the mindset I'm in right now. Obviously, I'm sure when it happens, it's going to be beautiful and at the same time chaotic. And as always in my life, I figured shit out. So we'll figure it out.
Yeah. And with that, obviously, you've mentioned, a lot of projects on there, for businesses. Have you kind of got, and this might be a little bit of a tangent here, but have you found that with more experience, you've found to be able to adjust and change your schedule and kind of make it work? Because, you speak with other, gym owners, entrepreneurs, trainers and coaches where, you work hard to get a routine and a schedule, but then being able to adjust and adapt is also a useful skill. Have you found you've got better at that over time, or is that still kind of a challenge for you?
Absolutely. Like I think that, I would say productivity is probably one of those things where I've gotten 10 times better at it, but I can still get 10 times better at it, right? Like
Yeah.
you're always evolving and improving. And there's seasons of life. Yeah. I mean, look, I mentor a lot of younger coaches, whether it's internships here, or actually people that we hire. We have in our business coaching program, we have, tens and tens and tens of people in there. Our workshops, thousands of people online attend the summit, so on and so forth. My point is just that like I speak with a lot of folks and then it becomes the first phase of your career. It's like the first years of your career, and people are trying to find shortcuts. And look, it's smart to be efficient, but that season of life is going to be like, hey, you want to put in a lot of reps to become great at what you do. You can't, and by the like, I don't want to go like hardcore on hustle culture, and because again, like, but if I want to get great at my craft, which is coaching, right? Again, I'm gonna bucket this differently. So there's
Yeah.
coaching, there's the business of coaching. Business of coaching, let's say, might be owning a gym or building an online business and having a team and whatnot, right? But to become great at coaching is like equivalated to, becoming great at basketball. What do I have to do to make it to the, and I played ball and made it to the pros, and it's like you put unreal amounts of hours into your ball handling skills, then practice in the gym with the team, then you go and lift weights, then you do your conditioning, then you, right? I mean, it's just insane amounts of hours. And you would never expect somebody that goes like, "Hey man, I practice about an hour a day, weekends I don't really do anything, and but I'm gonna make it to the NBA." I mean, it's just there's no way, because there's millions and millions of people, with probably better genetics and taller and athletic abilities and whatever it may be, training a lot harder than you. So it's not gonna happen, right? And now I'm not gonna completely equivalate that to coaching, but it's like if you want to be a top 1%, 3%, 5%, coach, and you're like, well, I dabble, I do a little part, 10 hours here, and I do a little social, and I do a little bit of that. Like, you're never going to be like in the top 1%. There's a certain requirement for everything in life, right? And, to be an entrepreneur, to be a gym owner, gym ownership is not an easy business, right? It's like a top five hardest businesses type of thing. Not
Yeah.
as hard as restaurants. That's probably number one, tough one, but it's tough, and it's like, but if you love it, if you have a purpose behind it, and there is a way of making it extremely successful, and you making really good money, and also while doing something you love doing, making incredible impact. So, but again, when somebody's like, "Hey, I just opened a gym. I kind of want to, I want to work 6 to 8 hours a day, no weekends." I'm like, that's not going to happen. At least the first phase of that, right? When you're building
Yeah.
it, eventually that can happen. I mean, my partner in Built to Last, which is our mentorship business. He's got a gym in Huntsville, Alabama. They're going to do 1 million this year in a 5,000 square foot facility, 36% profit margin. Guy works like 14 hours a week, on that. But the thing is, but he's been in business 23 years, bust his ass, really kind of created this incredible model, great team, great operation system, right? And again, doing exceptionally well. My point is though, there's a season, right? And
Yeah.
it's like some of the things I'm doing in this season of life, which I still work a lot and hard because I love what I do and I'm very driven and ambitious. But I'm in a phase of going like, hey, like I gotta offload even more than I'm offloading, right? And I've
Yeah.
offloaded a lot, but like, hey, I need a right hand person in this business. I don't want, I'm a landlord of this building that I'm in. And being a landlord is actually a good chunk of work, but trust me, like,
Yeah.
people are like, oh, passive income, just people just pay you rent. It's like, man, if I told you the expenses I had last year of fixing shit, it's a lot. Well, somebody needs to, I just got an email this morning from the fire department that came to do a checkup, and now probably I got to pay some stuff, who knows what. Somebody has to, like, okay, cool. Somebody else manage that completely. All I need
Yeah.
to know is like the big money decisions on that, right?
Yeah.
Again, it's a season. And if you've been in the game for a specific period of time, what happens is that as you kind of go deeper and deeper into your genius, right? You go, oh, look, there's 5 to 10%, maybe 15% of things that only I can do, right? And I want to get better and better and better and better at those, 5, 10, 15% of things. But then the rest, I gotta give it to somebody else. That's either way better than me at it, or it's like they can do it 80% as well as me, right? But my time is better spent somewhere else.
Yeah.
And that becomes part of that, who not how game as I continue to dive deeper into, my expertise and my genius.
Yeah.
And again, if somebody's listening to this in like year two, listen, you got to become a great generalist before you become a great specialist, and
Yeah.
I would say that goes for kind of anything almost, I believe, but definitely in this industry, there's a lot of folks that are like, hey, I'm just starting off, like I want to be the best, sports performance soccer guy, right? I'm like, who have you trained? And it's like, not really much, Okay, I'm like, man, spend the next 5 years training everybody you can train. Old people, rehab, this, that. Like people want to build muscle. because that's how you'll learn a ton. That's how
Yeah.
you, and you'll get better at then later if that's really still what you want to do. Training. I would say more sports performance soccer because when I came, when we started the gym in Slovenia, and I came to the States, I was like, man, I'm going to train high school athletes, college athletes, pro athletes, and I did. I trained some of that. Now, if that's all I trained, I would be broke. And the boot camps took off, and my semi-private personal training took off, and I was really good at getting people transformations, right? And I was like, oh wow, like I enjoy training, non-athletes a lot more than I thought I would. Actually, like the results they get are very fulfilling. Like it's incredible seeing people change and transform their lives, and so then it's like I grew that. Now I still love the sports performance side of it. That was just a small part of the business. It's in the last 4 or 5, 6 years, I'd say that part has grown quite a bit with, very high level pro athletes that reach out to me. I've done sports teams, high school sports teams, like all types of different things. But again, I was a generalist. I trained some high school athletes, some college guys, a pro here and there. But then it was like tons of people that I want to feel better. I want to build muscle. I want to move better. I want to lose fat. And I just had to, constantly improve my craft to be able to serve those people. And then, over time, you kind of find out more and more of like what you love doing the most, what you're the best at the most. And you can dive into those areas more, right? And
Yeah.
even like me being a business coach, like how, I tell people, how did that happen? Like it was probably I'm year 6 into running a gym and it's doing very very well and people would keep reaching out to me like, hey man, like how you doing this, could I schedule a call? And at first I was like, I don't know if I should be coaching anybody because I
Mm.
have no contrast to what it really means to be successful, how much money is a lot of money, profit margins, all that stuff, until I joined a mastermind. And when I joined a mastermind, with some people that I was really looking up to, and we're sitting there and I'm telling them the profits I'm making and they're like, you're doing what? And it confirmed that like I'm doing some good stuff. And
Yeah.
from there I took on 6 local coaches that wanted to be gym owners, already had a gym, and it was just like a project, like let me see, right? And I helped all those people like significantly grow their business. And that's what it ended up turning into, me and Steve back then starting the Pack Fitness business, which was probably, sheesh, like 13 years ago, something like that. I've been doing
Yeah.
business coaching, but it came from like proof of concept first,
Yeah.
right? People reaching out to you about the thing and then kind of going like, all right, let me try this out. And then, doing a good job and helping people with that. And then it kind of grew into that, right? So that's why I talk about like seasons of it was, for me, my first essentially 10 years, I mean, majority of the stuff that I was focused on was just like coach, be the best coach on the planet and try to run the best gym. And
Yeah.
then a lot of other things started kind of evolving from there.
Yeah, quite a lot of good points in there. And as you were talking, I kind of had two questions going round my head. So the first one, obviously, you've mentioned there, mentoring coaches, business owners, and you mentioned, when you first started, you just wanted to be, and you said it there, you just wanted to be the best coach that you could be. Try and develop from there. Do you think that there's sometimes a tendency with, trainers and coaches that they're thinking too much about the end product rather than actually like spending time in the trenches, if you like, trying to, actually put the hours in for coaching. Whereas, do you think sometimes they just want to be seen as this figure within the fitness industry, within strength and conditioning, rather than putting the hours in? And then the second question would be, you mentioned there about wanting to train athletes. Did you kind of, and enjoying that, did you kind of incorporate some of that into training general population in some shape or form to keep that enjoyment? I realized there were two quite big questions there, but hopefully that made sense.
Sorry, we'll go off on some tangents here, but but I
Yeah.
it I mean the first one, look, I think that there's a saying, and I really think this is important. It's like, um, direction is more important than destination, right? And I think a lot of, with the rise of social media, and I have mixed feelings about it. Obviously, I use it a lot, right? Because a bunch of my business is on there. I think it can be extremely powerful tool to help people motivate, inspire, educate. But it's also created some things again where you have this, comparison or, this whole like, oh man, like I could just, I could just be online and do this, and I'll just do, I'll do a little bit of training on the floor and then kind of build my online business and try to do branding and go viral. And like, fortunately or unfortunately, I know majority of the most successful people online, and I also know the majority of people that look successful online. But follows and likes don't equate to dollars in the bank account.
Yeah.
And so, there's this kind of like desire to make it, and I almost look at some of the things on social, not all, but by the way, not all. Like, I want to kind of compartmentalize this, but like,
Yeah.
it's almost like, back in the day when you try to make it in the I don't know, 30s and 40s, people would go to Hollywood, right? When it was on the rise or whatever. And it's like you're busting tables, but you're just waiting for that shot. And like, but so many people are. Now, if you make it, like it's big, but you never hear about the people that didn't make it, right?
Yeah.
And I think with social, it's kind of like that, right? It's just like you become an entertainer a lot of times, right? And because you're chasing the virality, the likes, this, that, the other. Now, I think there's a right way to do it for coaches, and we can talk about that later. And but I think that that's what's happening is that people are rushing to that destination, right? The destination is like, hey man, I do 20 hours a week. People are paying me a shit ton of money. And I'm just coaching in person. Then I do have an online business. I do some brand deals, and I'm making like three, 400, $500,000 take home. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, cool, cool, right? Like, it's like, hey, you're a year out from that, right? And that's just not reality. Now, listen, that can be reality. That can be built. I mean, I've done it. I've seen it. Like, I'm not. But my point being is, you're as one of my very good friends in one of the two pieces of advice, but one of them was like, everything, it's like you drastically overestimate what you can do in the short term, but you drastically underestimate what you can do in the long term, right? So it's like, what you think you can do in like 6 months versus, or maybe a year versus what you can do in 10. You can do
Yeah.
more in 10 than what you believe, but you drastically overestimate what you can do in 6 months or a year, right? And I think that's kind of the same what we're talking about here, right? That like if I want to, by the way, and I will die on this hill, I don't think that you can be a great online coach with very little offline on the floor experience. It's
Yeah.
just, I mean, we can have a debate and bring all the people on to argue this, and I will go straight up like political style, give me the little, what I mean, table, and I'll just rip. It's just here's the thing, right? Like if you look at behavior psychology, you can dive into this and understand this, right? Like it's hard to coach people even when you're in front of them 3 days a week, 4 days a week, because of their past habit loops and traumas and experiences and challenges in life and environment that is constantly kind of pushing them towards habits that aren't supporting them, right? Now you take away that proximity, right? And you go online. I'm like, look, there's great technology, stuff like that, but it's not the damn same. So it becomes even harder. So if I, and when you said that, that's actually an old bio, but it's like, we're me personally now, I'm like at 4,000 plus people coached because,
Yeah.
I'd go in and coach the whole high school, 80 kids, football. Then I'd go, 34 kids basketball. I got the, pro rugby team back there, 40. Like, I mean, I'm coaching a lot of people, right? And I have experience of coaching one-on-one, semi-private groups, teams, and the conversations that you have and how hard sometimes it is to help somebody change. And it might take a year, or a year and a half that they keep coming to the gym and finally something clicks, right? And then you understand that like the attendance and the buy-in in person is much, much, much higher than online. Look at the stats, right?
Yeah.
If you have an online client for 3 to 6 months, that's long, by the way, right? Look at the averages. You can look all this stuff up online. If somebody comes to our gym, like, I mean, we're averaging at least a year. Sure, some
Yeah.
people only stay, 3, 4 months, but there's a lot, I got clients from 15 years ago, right? So it's the point being is it's even more difficult. Now, my end of how many people I've coached, nutrition coaching, lifestyle, all this is thousands of people, right?
Yeah.
So now if I'm doing stuff online, man, my bucket and toolbox of experiences is so much drastically bigger, right? I'm understanding scenarios where you're online, you're just like, you know, bullet points, templates. You don't really know. It's a lot of guesswork. Sure. And by the way, like of course, if you're good at, motivational interviewing and asking questions and all this stuff, yes, it's going to be helpful. But I just don't believe, and I haven't seen it to where, you know, somebody does a couple years of coaching kind of part-time-ish and then just absolutely crushes it long-term online, right?
Yeah.
So I think that if you are like, hey, I want to be a phenomenal best, world online coach, part of that process to me is coaching a lot of people in person. Um,
Yeah.
maybe when it comes to nutrition coaching, the lines blur a little bit because, you're not training folks, but I still would say you'd have a huge benefit of training people in person. I actually most of the best coaches online still do some offline coaching
Yeah.
just to keep a pulse, just to keep
Yeah.
that skill set sharp. And again, that's the hill that I'm going to die on. But it takes me back to this, right? Like, there's a great book that it's not old, but it's older from Cal Newport called "So Good They Can't Ignore You," which is a Steve Martin saying, and it talks about the passion hypotheses and. Which is basically like that. You just run into something like, oh my God, I love this. And then you're just in love with it and work is easy, right? Which is not
Yeah.
true. There's there's something called deliberate practice, right? Which means that like you're very, very focused on the skill that you're practicing, right? That's why it's deliberate. And deliberate practice is what builds skills and career capital, right? So career capital in the fitness industry, for example, right? You got to spend a lot of time having deliberate practice in coaching, right? And that might be everything from writing programs to coaching cues to communication with clients to problem solving. I would even say, getting better at writing emails and writing texts and write. So writing is going to
Yeah.
help you become a better coach, right? Speaking will help you become a better coach. These are all deliberate practice skills that will help you become better. So, and the thing is, imagine if like you take two people and on paper you go like, hey, here's coach, you know, A, and he spent 2 years in industry. He was coaching 15 to 20 hours per week. He was at a big box gym, and now he's going online. I'm just giving an example, right? And here you got
Yeah.
Coach B, 6 years, 40 hours of coaching per week, and 3 of those years he was under at Vigor Ground or whatever BCI or any type of gym that has been very successful with helping people transform. Which person do you think is more skilled? I mean, it wouldn't, you'd be like, oh shit, like common sense. This person has 4 more years, double the hours, so that's 8x. Plus, they're under a model where it's already been proven and trained, and like they're getting that experiences versus like, in the big box gym, you're probably, I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but over time, nobody's really usually mentoring you, guiding you, helping you become better, right? You'd go
Yeah.
like, well shit, like that person's probably a better coach, right? And it's the same thing. You look at basketball. Hey, this kid trains 3 days a week for an hour. It's like this kid trains, times 3 days, 3 days a week. He trains twice a day for an hour and a half, and the other days he trains once. Like you'd be like, shit, well, that kid's probably better. And
Yeah.
I'm gonna shout out a lot of books here by like the Gold Mine Effect, and it talks about sports performance, but also like business performance and like why are there pockets of the world, Cuba for baseball, Kenya for running, Brazil for soccer, like what are when you break it down, what is actually happening there that makes these people so good? And it's like it's deliberate practice, it's environment is one of them for sure,
Yeah.
but it's deliberate practice, it's rugged conditions because it's like they give the example of Chelsea spending hundreds of millions on this soccer youth development program that's never developed nearly as much as the favelas of Brazil as far as soccer goes, right? Like,
Yeah.
and you kind of break that down and you go like, oh, okay, a lot of this makes sense. It's like there's a formula for creating greatness. And I'll tell you what the formula does not include is like much less hours of deliberate skill practice. It just,
Yeah.
it just doesn't exist. And so I really do think that there that brings me to, you've heard the saying like, when you love what you do, you never work a day in your life.
Yeah.
I absolutely love what I do, and I can tell you that a lot of days I'm like, holy shit, I worked a lot today. Some days I don't want to work, some days I'm pissed off, but in general though, I do like I love what I do. I'm purposeful about it. It's meaningful to me, right? It's not just love, it's like it's meaningful to me. And then like I do lose track of time. I'm like, I get home sometimes, long ass day, and like my girl's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm just going through this, Les Spellman acceleration course he sent me. And I'm going through, it's like I'm going through stuff, right? Like I'm
Yeah.
just reading this book." She's like, "You're nuts, man." Like, but it's because I'm curious. Like I want to know more. I want to learn more. Like I love this craft. I love this industry. So I think it's important for you to find that, right?
Yeah.
Where you don't go and say like, oh man, when is this done? I'll work for, oh, this place pays an extra $2 per hour. I'll go there, right? Because now it's like what we said earlier. Now it's about outcome, not direction.
Yeah.
But I can promise you that, like, if you're into what you do and it's meaningful to you, and hey, learning over earning at the beginning
Yeah.
phases, right? Like, build your skill, and I promise you over time, like, you'll make really, like, if you're great at what you do, you will make really good money for your industry, right? So I think that that's like a really important lesson that I tell people, right? I'm like, hey, if you're looking at the clock, you know, halfway through your internship or what, I'm gonna talk to you, be like, hey, what's going on, man? Like, are you bored? Are you not present? And hopefully, kind of give you the insight of like, man, if you, by the way, back to the so good they can't ignore you. All the studies show it that the better you get at your craft, the more passionate you become about the craft,
Yeah.
right? So, and for me, like I share the example of basketball. Like I wasn't good at basketball. I was just pissed off because I was a short kid. Nobody picked me, and I just trained really hard to be like, fucking, I'm gonna prove you wrong. But the thing is, the harder that I trained, the better I got, the more I fell in love with the sport, right?
Yeah.
So, and the thing is, it's the same thing with coaching or anything else. I tell people like, hey, look, when you're younger, you're gonna probably try a bunch of different things, right? Which you should. You're gonna be figuring yourself out and finding yourself. One of the biggest mistakes is that like you don't put your best effort into what you do. Because if you don't, I don't think you'll truly ever discover like what you want to do, right?
Yeah.
If you're putting a 5 out of 10 in, it's like, well, I'll put in a 10 out of 10 when I find the thing that I
Yeah.
love. And then see, that's kind of like the passion hypothesis. I'm like, no, put a 10 out of 10 in and do that for a while. And yeah, you'll figure out like, man, I put in a 10 out of 10. I'm getting good at the skill of putting my best effort in, which is a skill in and of itself,
Yeah.
right? If you go through life for 3 years bullshitting, like, you're 4 out of 10 because you're like, whatever. I'll turn it on once I find a thing. Once you get to a place where like, I think I like this, you can't just turn it to a 10. You've been spending 3 years of your life with a 4 out of 10 effort. Now you've become really good at 4 out of 10.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I try to explain to anybody into any career that they go to, let alone fitness. I'm like, hey, you're gonna intern here for 12 weeks, or you're committed here for a year. Man, I'm telling you, give it everything that you've got. And after a year, you'll know if this is
Yeah.
for you or not. Maybe sooner, but like but give it everything you got. Give me your best effort, right? Get curious, like hustle for it, right? And those people tend to have, first of all, more clarity at the end of the things that they do. And I think that they find things faster. Also, there's a quote that I like to share is like, purpose isn't found, it's forged, right? You work, right? You work really hard and you forge purpose. It's not like you sit on a couch and you read a book about purpose and you're like, haha, I got it. This is what I'm gonna do. This is what I'm purposeful about, right? Like, I mean, there's stuff that guides you, but I think that really the most important part of that is to go, work for it. So
Yeah.
hopefully that kind of answers. I mean, I went off on a tangent, but that kind of answers my thoughts around that.
Yeah. No, no, like I am known for going off on tangents myself, but I thought that was really well said. And there was a couple of keywords that you kept mentioning there, which was like, it's your craft, it's your skill, and being able to make mistakes. Think things are going to go wrong, and is that maybe sometimes. Again, this might be a little bit of a tangent, but I think it's quite an interesting topic for especially newer coaches coming in. Do you reckon that's maybe a mindset that they don't have? They just think, yes, they need to put the hours in, but it's more about, the programming, the reps, the exercises, rather than, actually thinking about, the building relationships with clients in terms of solving problems like what you mentioned, and maybe it's a mindset that they don't see it as a skill. They just think about, well, if I'm taking someone through a session, it's got to be the exercises and the program rather than
Uh,
the other things that you've
I mean,
mentioned.
this is phew, this could be a podcast series and I get very passionate about this because I'm a true training geek. I mean, I started lifting when I was 13 when my mom opened up a gym as her second job. I mean, I played basically sports saved my life. Like basketball saved my life legitimately. And so I've been, lifting weights for 30 years. I started studying it like when I was 14. And I could go through the story of, at 16, 17 years old, I was doing track and field with Srđan Đorđević, who was the best track coach in that part of Europe. I was training with Brigitte. He trained Marilyn Adi for the last, 6, 7 years of her career. Brigitte Bukovic, so I was training with Olympics medalists, right? Like she was
Yeah.
100 silver medalist in 110-meter hurdles in Barcelona. And but so my point to that being is that like, that as far as training, like you got to know your training absolutely, sets, reps,
Yeah.
periodization, blah blah blah, all that stuff, right? And I got so into that, and I still think it's important. I think most people don't study things like movement, kinesiology, anatomy, biomechanics enough, right? It's kind of like have no base in that. I think you should, but there's this kind of pendulum that swings where you have a lot of folks now today, I think, that are into science and theory of all this stuff, forgetting that we deal with human beings. And
Mm.
I think I was talking to Brett Bartholomew. I think we're kind of dissecting like what is the definition of coaching. It's like these three buckets, right? There's technical expertise, and so that's a lot of what I'm mentioning here, right?
Yeah.
The Prilepin charts, and we go back and forth, undulating periodization, block, but all that stuff. And but then it's like second one is problem solving, and then third one's communication. And the bucket of communication is a long list of skills, active
Mm.
listening skills, motivational interviewing, all those different things. But you could have the greatest program, but it's like, how do you get the person to do it? Same thing with nutrition, right? Any person could go online and know the basics of nutrition in like 14 days. Yeah, no, you're not going to be a PhD. I'm not saying that like that craft is not incredible. What I'm saying
Yeah.
is that people would figure out how many calories to eat, how much fiber, protein per pound of body weight, how much they should hydrate, like these X's and O's that if they did, it would help them be healthy and successful, right?
Yeah.
And yet we have the biggest health issue we've ever had in this country as far as obesity goes and, people being metabolically unhealthy. So obviously the information, I kind of call it three-step process. You got to take the information to integration, and then that creates transformation, right? Like,
Yeah.
in getting that to integration is learning about people, their stories, understanding them, being curious, being good at communication, understanding change psychology, and there's understanding environments and how they influence behavior. Like, and the thing is that, a lot of people are kind of like, well, nah, man, like I love fucking training, drop sets and, wave loading and da. And it's like, you're not going to help people succeed. You're not like, and that's when earlier I said the reason why it's working with a wide population of people is because you'll work with quote unquote difficult clients,
Yeah.
um, but really, to me, difficult clients, I said that too. I used to be like, oh, these people are uncommitted, they're difficult, but I was lacking the skills to help them,
Yeah.
and it took a big shit show in my own personal life to kind of, start understanding that, man, like I have problems in my own life, maybe not in fitness and nutrition, but in other areas. And it's the same as these people do. It's like so I need to elevate my skills to actually help them with this, right? It's my lack of
Yeah.
skills. I'm just like, oh, I can help these people that are like more committed, more A plus, this, that, the other. But man, the more difficult, the more difficult, like I said, I put that in quotes, right? The
Yeah.
client is, I just don't have the skills to help them. And a lot of that is, again, the communication side of things and understanding the science of change psychology and behavior change and environmental sciences and all these different things, right? And I think that that's such a important factor for any coach coming up, like because it's kind of like, look, 10 years ago, you could have been a coach with or trainer that just knows training.
Yeah.
Today, if you want to get anybody health and body comp results, like you got to know nutrition. I
Yeah.
mean, you're a relic if you don't, So,
Yeah.
um, and I think the next phase, and I think the phase is already here, that your value significantly increases if you understand behavior psychology, right? And
Yeah.
the actual skills, though, not just like I'm gonna, spout it to you theoretically, but like know how to apply it so that you can help people apply the things so they start doing them, right? So they start eating enough protein every day. They have enough water. They eat enough fiber from fruits and veggies, mostly whole and processed foods. They understand sleep a little bit better and improve their, kind of sleep patterns and yada yada yada, right? Like you can't you those are all part and we wear a lot of hats. And so you do have to study these skills. It just is the reality of it if you want to be a top level coach.
Yeah.
Personally, I think it's exciting.
Yeah.
I think that I've been doing this for, over 20 years. And I mean, I read, I was just telling, Andy, I read 7, 8 hours per week. I'd go through courses. I'm like more curious than I've ever been, and I've
Yeah.
always been a very curious person because I'm like, how can I get better? How can I
Yeah.
learn to be better for my clients for whether it's, in the gym or online or in business? Like you always just trying to get better.
Yeah, and I think I can 100% kind of resonate with that because that's what keeps it interesting because you're learning new things, trying to implement new things, and that's what it keeps it interesting to keep learning new things and trying those things out to because as a coach, one of the things that I do enjoy is for me personally is that problem solving, but you need to learn more, get more tools to try and solve that problem. When because coming back to your point where you mentioned, if you only put 4 out of 10 effort in and never put 10 out of 10, when we're talking about coach development, if you like, do you think that's where in terms of that long-term investment, thinking underestimating what they can do in a longer period of time is because they may be only going in 4 out of 10, trying to learn just the just the basics rather than that continued learning. Do you think that's where sometimes newer coaches maybe fall down a little bit for longer term development?
I mean, I think that's one of the things for sure, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, you know, you've probably heard about growth mindset, right? But I tend to listen to things that people say. If you're having a conversation with them and they're like, well, I just can't do that, or like, I've always been haven't been good at reading. All my family genetics are, we just hold weight. We just hold more weight, right? So those are self-limiting beliefs. I want to start changing those, or should I say, planting seeds to change those beliefs. And sometimes that takes time, right? But I think that could be part of it. Another part of it is, again, look, if you put a 4 out of 10 effort in, I truly don't think you can ever. Well, first of all, you 100% cannot like fulfill your potential.
Yeah,
But I think for most people, they're gonna have a very, very tough time, right? Because it's like this. I can't remember where I saw this, but there's actually more competition for mediocrity because most people don't believe that they can do great things, right? And to me, that's sad. Like what I do in all of my businesses is like I believe in people more than they believe in themselves. They're like, man, like you absolutely can do this. Now it's going to require a lot more effort and a lot more work, but you can. There's nothing like holding you back. Now look, if somebody comes to me and is like they're 34 years old and they're 5'2" and they're like, I'm going to play an NBA, I'm like, all right, look, it's not happening. Let's just kill that dream right there. But they certainly can, in most scenarios, achieve a lot more than they think. Now, with that said, so imagine that, right? If most people set pretty low goals, it means that majority of humanity is fighting for like us, like this mediocre kind of end goal, right?
yeah,
Or direction, like we said before. So, man, it's like there's actually less competition in the higher echelons, right? So, just from an odds standpoint, that's a good idea. It's like
yeah,
what job are you going for? And it's like, well, shit, like there's 10,000 people vying for this job. Man, there's only like 100 vying for this one because most people don't believe that they can get it.
yeah,
Okay, so now you're going up against 100 people instead of 10,000 people, right? So that's part. But the thing, guess what? You got to live in that 9 and 10 out of 10 effort to be able to do that, right? There's just no way you're showing up at a 4 or 5 out of 10 and achieving spectacular things. We actually just got these shirts and hoodies printed here at Vigor Ground. In one of the seasons, I was the pro rugby head strength coach for the Seattle Seawolves. We had a saying, 10 in, 10 out, right? And before every practice, after every practice, I'm like, guys, look, what is, the 10 outcome this year is that we win the championship again, right? And but the thing is, like, if you show up to this, I was in charge for in gym sports performance. Like James would do all the catapult stuff, and we talk about it, whatnot. But like,
yeah,
I'm like, when you come here. if you're coming here and like I get a 5.6 out of you, and then cumulatively as a team, we're a 7.1. How are we going to win the championship?
Yeah.
10 in, 10 out, 10 effort. By the way, guys, when you go home and it's like you're busting down beers instead of hydration, you're not checking your food, you're staying up late video games till 2 a.m. Man, that's a 3 out of 10 on your recovery.
Yeah.
You got to put in a 10 to get out of 10. Like that's it. So we'd always go and I say 10 in, they say 10 out. That to me is like every session I'm doing that, I'm instilling a belief system,
Yeah.
right? And I'm telling a story. I'm telling stories. You know what I mean? Like, hey guys, look, let me tell you a little story. And like, man, at the beginning, sometimes they'd be like, oh man, it's fucking guys telling stories. You know, like after a while, it was like if I didn't tell the story, but like, yo, no story, coach.
Yeah.
And that's what you want. But like that's what it takes. It's that like you cannot show up, and I went from, high school basketball in Slovenia or in Europe, it's like you play for the junior team or the pro team. So I went all from high school ranks to college, to pros, made it as far as the NBA Summer Pro League, never, played in the NBA. That was my dream. But every level you go to, I mean, if you dominated at high school, you go to college. Well, everybody that dominated high school is now on your team. You might be now the 10th guy on a 12 team roster, and now you have to work your face off because everybody there is working their face off. And you go to the next level. Now it's like everybody that was the best in their state, you know what I mean, or the
Yeah.
best at their D1 college is now there, and like the guy that was scoring 30 in college is now on the bench for the NBA team. Like it just so imagine now that like in life at the beginning, as you're developing your career, you show up at a 4 out of 10. You have no shot because every level that you go up, there's just more and more talent and people that put in the effort, right? So
Yeah.
it's like I believe it's such an important skill set to instill. Because I don't know, like, listen, people that have been at Vigor for a long time will tell you this as clients, right? Like, I used to not sleep a lot. Again, I'm not promoting this. It's just like it's all I knew. I worked so much,
Yeah.
and I'd finish writing articles and do a business and work at 1:30, sometimes 2, go to sleep, wake up at 4:45, and then go run my boot camp at 5:30 back then. And man, I mean, on 3 hours of sleep, I mean, nobody's feeling great, right?
Yeah.
But I can tell you what I would do. I turn the windows down so the cold air will hit me as I drive into the gym. Turn on the lights and come back out into my car, put on DMX, like get my mind right, talk to myself. And then once people were already in the building, I would come in doing high knees, right? And people were like, this guy's nuts, right? And the thing is, I was tired, right? But it was just like, okay, it's like Tony Robbins says, right? Motion creates emotion.
Yeah.
And then, some would laugh, some would be like, and then guess what? It bring their energy up. And as their energy got up, it fired me up more.
Yeah.
And I would have these crazy sessions and people are like, this dude is nuts. But like, man, I get up in the morning and this person like lights a spark to my fuel and I have the best day. Right? Now, what I was doing is like under not great circumstances, choosing a different attitude in that 10 out of 10 effort. Because I was
Yeah.
like, man, and by the way, back then it was like, if I don't do this, I mean, I'm not having people in my classes and I'm broke. I'm barely,
Yeah.
I'm eating ramen noodle right now. I'm paying for rent barely. So I have to do this. Like I don't have marketing budgets. I don't have any of these things. So, I was like, and my gym is, I mean, I got an old beat up squat rack I bought from Craigslist. I got, dumbbells from 30 years ago. So what is my differentiator going to be? And that's literally how, in 2008, basically when I opened, I mean, it was 2006 that I started coaching in the US, but it was like in 2008 that I opened up the gym.
Yeah.
And people were like, dude, there's this crazy Eastern European guy, man. And like his workouts are, I mean, the energy, the coaching is just like, it's nuts. And it was word of mouth. It was referrals, right? But imagine if I came in at a 4 out of 10.
Yeah.
I mean, so I learned to be a 10 out of 10 no matter what, even with 3 hours of sleep. Again, please don't take this as like Lukas said, sleep 3 hours. No, like it's just it's the only thing I knew. It was the resource and skill that I had was like I have more effort and time, and I'm just going to sleep less so that I can get this thing going because I have no other option but to succeed here, right?
Yeah.
And but now it was like I don't even know how to, the other day, I get a call. Coach can't get in. It's like, man, can you run a class? And it's like it's 4:30, man. I was working late. I come in here, I'm going to put on a show.
Yeah.
If there's 2 people or if there's 20 people, because my standard and what I've practiced for so long is that like I'm running in doing high knees. I just listened to DMX. Like, it's going to be the greatest workout of all time. right? And imagine if you came through and like that's the way that you coach. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? Like it's like
Yeah.
I always say, like whenever in doubt, because like I got a bunch of new coaches right now that are great culture fits, like really good people, need to continue to work on the skill of coaching. And and I do a ton of in staffs and a ton of development. But I said, look, at the baseline, be a CMP, which is a certified nice person. Shout out to Mike Ball for that one. Bring energy and then coach people and smile, right?
Yeah.
And it's like for group training, you got a pretty damn good foundation right there, and you're going to actually, be a step above majority of people because and I hear this all the time now. Group training is dead. This is dead. That's dead. Like bullshit. Like I think that like what happens is like there's still coaches that bring the fire, and those classes are busy. You know what I mean? Like because it's like, man, the training is good, the coaching is on top of, the energy is awesome. Like you treat people awesome, you build those connections, relationships, and it's like people want to be there. But I guarantee you, none of those classes that are very, very packed, people are showing up at a fucking 4, 5, 6, or even a 7. Like they're showing up
Yeah.
at on a bad day they're at 8. On their
Yeah.
normal day, like they're 9 plus, and their best days are a 10. But the thing is that everybody can be a 10 on the best day,
Yeah.
right? That's the thing. Like, oh yeah, when I'm on, man, I'm great. I get well, everybody's like that,
Yeah.
and it's like this was a thing that was a really big mindset shift for me, which was that if you're consistently very good for a long time, you're actually become legendary. Not excellent, right? Because I was always like excellence every day. Now look, I still believe in that, but my point is like if you are just very good and reliably very good, where people are like, I know what I'm getting from Luka, right? Every day. No, it doesn't matter what happens. His cat died, he's tired, he's gonna show up, and I know what I'm gonna get, and it's gonna be very good. It might not be 1% world class, but it's gonna be very, very good. But the thing is, over 20 years, that becomes legendary. And it's better than the guy that's like phenomenal, phenomenal, and
Yeah.
shitty, doesn't show up. Okay, phenomenal. Okay, okay, okay. Bad time in life. Boo, 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 boo. Like that's not legendary.
Yeah.
So again, like I try to say this from a lot of experience. Again, I've had a gym for 19. We started one in Slovenia 19 years ago. I've been coaching for 21. And it's like we have two gyms now that have been going on to close to 20 years in business, and just coaching for decades. And it's like I've seen people come and go, and the people that are reliably good or very good or very, very good, those are the people that are still around and have, built amazing things and become legendary. So I think there's a huge lesson there.
Yeah.
And remember, very, very good is not a 4 out of 10.
Yeah.
That's like 8, 8.5, 9 consistently, right?
Yeah.
With And the thing is, when you're like that, you're also going to have a lot more tens.
Yeah, I think that entire section. So this was actually so part of my role as I've developed, if you like. Part of my role is like mentoring and developing the younger coaches, and this was something we actually went through in training literally the other week. So I think I might just clip that and take that out because that whole thing of especially having a certain standard. It's you know I really like the fact that you said everybody can be a 10 out of 10 on the best day, but a little bit like what you said, if you've not got much sleep, if something has happened at home, because coaches are human as well, something happened, how good can you be? What's the standard when you're not on your best day? Because I think actually you might have shared it quite a while ago. It's about kind of like acting as a skill, as a coach coming in, having that motivation, putting on that show. Sometimes it is going to be showtime when doesn't matter whether it's like what you mentioned there, whether it's one member, one client, one athlete in compared to 20 in there, and that's the difference. Quite a lot of topics and tangents thrown in there, Luca, but really enjoyed chatting with you. The last question, and there's been some gold nuggets of information all the way through, but for everyone listening, what would be your take home points or words of wisdom from what we've chatted about today?
Oof. I like to encapsulate, what we talked about today was a lot more principles. versus some strategic and tactical stuff, right? But I think it's important for people to grasp like principles of stuff. So I want to like this is a presentation I did a lot of 2024 on a lot of big stages, which was the kind of like the six buckets of success in the fitness industry. And I want to share those because I hope that this what I'm saying will kind of make sense when I explain the buckets, right? There are six buckets. The first one is knowledge, which is what you know. The second one is skills, what you can do. And we talked about skills quite a lot, right? So two is
Yeah.
skills, what you can do. Three is people, who you know, but also like even more importantly in my eyes is like who knows you,
Mm.
right? Resources is what you have, like money, assets, this, that. But also I think like, resources is like if you wrote a book, if you got a, phenomenal website with tons of article that people read, if you have a social media account, a podcast, a YouTube, right? Those are resources. Those are assets in some form or another, right? Then you have reputation, what people think of you, what they think of you. And then six is options. What options do you have? Now, I'll tell you what you got to focus on the most. Okay. The all these buckets can be taken from you. Your resources, the people around you can turn their back on you. Your reputation can be smeared, right? Your options can be gone. But the thing that no one can take from you is your knowledge and skills. Those two buckets, right? And the thing is, you kind of, as you fill in the knowledge and skill bucket, more people know you because you're doing great work, right? And it kind of goes along like that. And I think you should never stop filling the knowledge and skills bucket. What I see a lot today is that people want to jump to the resources and reputation bucket, right? That's
Yeah.
the outcome that we said, right? Oh man, how can I make as much money as possible and be known? But it's like, but are you filling your buckets? Why would you be known and have a lot of resources if you don't have knowledge and skills and the right people that know you and that you know, right? So that is literally the process in the career. And I think it's so important to view it that way because a lot of what we talked about today is kind of like, hey, how do you like fill that knowledge and skills bucket, right? And part of the underlying principle is also how you show up, like how you put in, work and effort and how you focus and get shit done. And I think that's a very, very, very important principle. I mean, again, there's
Yeah.
there's there's a lot to be said. We can do another episode in the future
Yeah.
because I get very fired up about this. And honestly, the reason why is because I love this industry, and what it's given to me. And again, basketball and fitness have truly saved my life, and there's a ton of episodes that people can listen to on that story. But and I get to wake up every day and I mean like literally change people's lives. That's our mission, that's our job, right? And it's
Yeah.
very fulfilling. And 21 years after I started coaching, I never get, tired of a person going like, Luka, this has changed in my life. I've lost this much weight. My energy is better. My life's better. I got because of that, I got a raise in my job. I'm now in a relationship. Like I could shed a tear right now. It never gets old. It never becomes like, oh yeah, I've heard that a lot of times, right? It's always to me like the same butterflies and energy, right? And it's like that's what we get to do. And I think it's the best industry in the world. I think it's tough from a standpoint of like becoming great at it, but anything is.
Yeah.
So choose your hard, you know what I mean? Like, and I want the people that actually, are like, hey, committed to this industry, that they go all in because you won't regret it. You'll
Yeah.
have regrets. I tell you what, like in life, you'll have a lot of regrets if you look back. I'm like, oh man, when I was doing that thing, no, I can't tell you how many people have said this to me, like that interned here and didn't go all in. And like years later, it's like, man, I really wish I would have went all in on that. And I'm like, hey, look, you still can, but I mean, you can't go back. But that's the thing. You'll regret not giving your best effort. But if you give your best effort for a good chunk of time and it doesn't pan out and it's not the thing for you, you'll be at peace,
Yeah.
right? But if you don't, man, I'm telling you, it'll mess with you.
Yeah. Well, we I only scratched the surface of the questions that I had down there. I can see the passion for it, for the industry. I think there's a lot of things that you said there that fills me with confidence that I'm not going too far wrong from what you've said there. But honestly, really enjoyed chatting with you today, Luca. A little bit like what you said earlier in the episode. I think we could have done a series of episodes from what you've spoken about today. But what I think is really helpful is especially for because I know we did speak a lot about developing skill and kind of going all in. I think for younger coaches, that's sometimes what needs what information and content needs to be put out there because there is a theme at the minute of wanting to do online. Whereas, I love training in person. I love it when people are rocking up for the sessions, because, I feed off their energy as well, which I think is an awesome feeling. And when people are saying, like what you said there, they've lost weight, done this, done that, it's really good. For everyone listening who might have any questions about what we've spoken about today, want to reach out to you or see the content that you put out there, where could people find you, Luca?
I would say the main platforms, and honestly, if you DM me, it's not a bot answering, it's me answering. Even though there's a lot of the DMs now, but I do because I give a shit, and if somebody reaches out, I'll always kind of connect. So on Instagram, Luka Hocevar, LukaHocevar. Now I have a big YouTube channel now that's honestly like it's educate a lot of education for coaches on there. And that's also just plugging Luka Hocevar into YouTube. And then the podcast is the Vigor Life podcast. Again, I would say the majority of our audience, and now there's thousands and thousands of listeners per episode, is mostly coaches. And also, if you lukahocevar.com is where my courses and workshops for coaches are. And if you own a gym, we help people grow their gyms. It's built to lastgym.com. It's actually like the official website is redone and being launched this week. So if it's not up yet, just DM me if you got any questions about that. But that's kind of where most of the stuff is dropped.
Ah, cool. Well, thanks again, Luca, for taking the time for jumping on. Thanks a lot to everyone listening, and I will see you all next week.
My pleasure.